Okay, this is definitely a bigger audience than I expected, so thank you so much for coming to this social media session. And I definitely hope everybody leaves here today with a couple takeaways that you can apply to your own social strategy. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Janet Stauble, and I'm the social media community manager for Bankrate.com. And actually, as of this week, I've been with Bankrate for 2 years. Thank you. And John, too, in the front row. I wanted to start out with an analogy about social media that I think sums up the entire purpose, business purpose for actually doing it. And that is social media is to blogging as coffee shops are to coffee. If you think about Starbucks coffee, what good would it be without all these little Starbucks shops globally where people come in and consume the coffee, where Starbucks distributes it, and more importantly, where people are building a community and friendships around the Starbucks brand and the community. So I think that's what social media does for our blogs. Without it, we wouldn't really have a community, and that community is what really kind of drives your website from just a domain name and elevates it to a brand. And of course, there's always the consumption factor or traffic. What good would your blog be without people reading it and interacting with your content and what you have to say? So obviously, social media provides great traffic sources for your blog, and probably a little less obviously, all that activity that happens on your blog, people sharing your content on Facebook and tweeting it and making comments, that's really sending signals to Google and Bing that you have high quality, popular content. And it's through social media that you can kind of trigger these search signals and maybe even earn some organic traffic from search to your blog. And of course, there's distribution. Every good business loves a good referral. And social media makes it really easy for people to recommend your content to their friends and when they come across your blog. So when you have things like distribution channels and traffic and a community, you really have the basis for a business that can make money. So obviously we can all see the value that social media plays in all of that. Just like to see a show of hands here. How many of you have ever joined a social network and quit it later because you just weren't getting anything out of it? Just curious, what were some of the networks that you guys quit? I heard Google Plus. Okay, all right. Well, one that we tried at Bankrate was Posterous, and it was so similar to Tumblr, and with Tumblr we were building a great community and we're getting some traffic from it. So it was a great success story for us, and we compared what was going on with Posterous, which was kind of like a ghost town, at least for our network on there. So we decided to give that one up and focus all of our resources and energy on Tumblr. So you're going to probably have that happen, and it's a natural evolution to find things that don't work and things that do. But these would be the 4 networks I recommend to people if you only have time to devote to just a few networks and to do them really well. Of course, Facebook is the social giant, but I think what really distinguishes it from your Twitters and Google Plus and LinkedIn is that you're not connecting necessarily with other bloggers or other media outlets or financial types. You're just kind of connecting with regular people who are your audience, who are going to come to your blog and read it and share it with their friends. And it's also a great home base for all of your social networks. You can easily stream all your tweets there. If you have a YouTube channel, you can stream your YouTube videos in there, do an RSS feed from your blog. So people who find you on Facebook can find you everywhere else. And you can also run some great targeted ads that aren't going to break the bank. Google Plus. This is great if you are serious about SEO. And honestly, even if you're not serious about SEO, it's something you should do. When Google offers you free real estate in search engine results pages, you take it. So we'll get into those details later. Pinterest is really fun. I think we can all agree on that. But it also sends great high-quality traffic to websites. And again, I'll have more details down the line. And of course, Twitter. This is the ultimate hybrid between broadcasting, and networking. And I don't really have to belabor this point to this group because it's kind of why we're all here. We know how to communicate, make connections, and build a community, and that's how this conference came to be. But what's unique about this is that we can duplicate this, rinse and repeat, again and again. So if you want to expand your brand kind of beyond this bubble, there are so many other bubbles out there on Twitter like this one. And you just need to find that niche and make those connections to expand your brand if that's what you're looking to do. So I'll get a little more specific about Facebook and getting engagement there and earned media. And I think it's funny because people talk about engagement like it's this touchy-feely, can't put your finger on it kind of thing. It's actually driven by an algorithm, and you can measure it. One way we measure our Facebook engagement is just keeping an eye on the ratio of the amount of fans we have and the amount of people that are talking about us. And why that matters, it's actually the people that are talking about you more than your fan count. Those are the people that are spreading your content. So let's say Bankrate, our fan page, got 10,000 more fans tomorrow. Well, if the same number of people are talking about us, we really haven't reached a new audience. So as we're on our social networks trying to grow our following, we really try to make sure that our engagement is keeping pace with our follower count. So earned media. Engagement is what gets earned media, because when people are commenting on your things, they're liking and sharing, that's how people's friends see your stuff. And I love the term earned media because you really do have to earn it. You set up a Facebook page, and obviously people don't just show up and share your stuff. Unless you're a bold-faced name and people are really seeking you out, I don't think anyone in here is a household name. We all have to just get out there and work for it. So how you do that is you can take advantage of Facebook's algorithm called EdgeRank. Is anybody here? I'm sure there are some people familiar with this. What Facebook kind of decides what goes in news streams, and most people are hanging out in news streams when they log onto Facebook. So this is how people would come across your content and your brand. And it's based on a couple different factors. Affinity, so the relationship people have to your fan page, and the relationship your fans have to their friends. It's also based on what you're posting. Are you posting a link? Are you posting a video or a photo? And then what's the interaction around that? Is it something that one person likes or that people are kind of getting jazzed up about? And then, of course, time decay when you're posting. So out of all these kind of factors that influence Facebook's algorithm, the things you can really control are what you post, when you post, and how people are reacting to that post. I love this image by Pandemic Labs. I found it on allfacebook.com. And what it shows is that most brand pages are posting links onto their wall, when what gets most engagement are pictures and videos. And I think this is really crucial, especially with mobile, because if you think about going through your own news streams on your iPhone or Android, links can kind of just get lost in all the clutter. But a picture or video is really going to fill up someone's entire screen. So they're really going to notice it, and it might give you a better chance to have people interact with it. And of course, you want to use Facebook to point people to where you want them to go, or go to your site for more information. So you can still include links in these type of posts. You just need to shorten them and put them in the text above the photo and the video. And kind of think of the photo and the video as a tease to get people back to your site and click that link. Did anybody here go to Lynn Pinzo's session yesterday on headlines? A couple of you. Good. I think he made a really good point about headlines, saying you need to be as specific and as concise as possible. And I think the same is true when you're posting on social networks. Something that's going to grab someone's attention, and it might get people to click through to your site. So an example we have on Facebook, we had a story called $100,000 income, no big deal anymore. And the headline's good, but I thought what was more interesting was this little nugget of information that was buried in the story. And that piece of information was, if you earned $100,000 in 1990, you would have to earn $172,000 in 2011 just to keep up with standard inflation. So I think that speaks to what a lot of people are going through now, is that prices keep going up, but our incomes are stagnant. So rather than just throw the link up to that story on our Facebook wall, we put a picture up there and a link to the full story if people wanted more details. But we just pulled out that little nugget of information from the story, and it really elicited a big response. People commenting everything from how the Fed actually calculates inflation and whether that's based in reality for you and me. And people just saying, heck, these people need to stop whining because I would love to have a $100,000 income. So I think really just tugging at those emotional strings and how it affects people. Another way is just how you ask questions. So kind of stick to closed-ended questions, simple things, because people don't come onto Facebook to think and write a paragraph. They just, so if you do yes, no, on a scale of 1 to 10, like or dislike, those are good ways to just get people to easily respond. And of course, responses mean their friends can likely see your post, so you're reaching new people. Okay, when to post. Buddy Media did a study I don't know when it was, but they found that most brands are posting during normal business hours, but the highest engagement rates on posts are outside of normal business hours. But the truth is, I've found all kinds of conflicting data about optimal times to post. So I think what you need to do if you're curious about when should I be posting on Facebook is just to run your own test. And this is what we did about a month ago for the last time. And it's very simple to do. You don't have to be a statistician or a rocket scientist. You just pick 2 times a day for a couple weeks and consistently post at those times every day. And then the next 2 weeks, pick 2 different times and consistently post during those. And Facebook Insights have all these great data points that you can look at: reach, engaged users, virality, and just kind of add those up and see which times are working for your brand. We found for Bankrate, our optimal times are 7:30 p.m., followed by 9:30 a.m., followed by 3 p.m., and then trailing behind is 7:30 a.m. So what works for my brand might not work for your brand, but it's good to just run that experiment. And I think it's more, honestly, more than just a statistical thing. It's a confidence thing. Because when you go out there to market yourself on these social networks, you have some science behind it. You're not just literally throwing things against your Facebook wall and seeing what sticks. So cross-promotion is awesome on any social network, and I think it's a little underutilized on Facebook. I know people are posting content by other people, which is great, but what people forget to do is to tag that person, because that person's not going to know you shared their blog post or you shared their article unless you tag their Facebook page. And even if you don't tag someone else's content, but you've interviewed an interesting source, and or you have statistics from an interesting source, you can find those Facebook pages and just tag those people, and they'll know that you are talking about them. And more importantly, you're just opening the door for more communication, for them to join your community. Some of those people end up becoming your fans and coming back to your page and interacting with you. Some of them you'll never see, but if you do those little things day in and day out, you'll eventually grow more of an audience. And of course, giveaways are very, very popular to do on Facebook, and it's kind of been an overlying theme on this at this conference that bloggers and brands are partnering together more and more. So if you can't afford to give away an iPad every 3 months, you're not out of luck. You can just build relationships with social media community managers for different brands and see if there's a way you guys can work together that's mutually beneficial for both brands. And just from my own anecdotal experience, this is very underutilized. Out of the hundreds and hundreds of personal finance bloggers that are out there, only 2 have ever approached me for sponsorship opportunities. So definitely just get out there and talk to people and build those relationships. All right, Google+. So this is a great way to get free real estate in search engine results pages. When people are looking for your brand or your blog, you get free real estate. This is an example from creditcards.com. If you search it, there pops up their Google Plus page. And that's really expensive real estate. If that wasn't there, Google would be making money off some ads by their competitors. So simply having a page really kind of elevates your brand in the search engine result pages. Another thing to take advantage of, and Matt Schultz kind of did a deep dive into this earlier, is Google authorship. And again, when people are searching for you or your brand or even a generic keyword and your content ranks for that, this is what's going to set your content apart from other search engine results. Here's an example by yours truly. You get the visual cue, there's my picture, and you get a little bit of social context. So how many people have me in circles? And you can set this up. It's pretty easy to do, and once it's set up, it's not something you have to maintain. So it really makes sense in the long run just to get it set up.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Google Plus?
Sure.
It seems like a lot of people do Google Plus because they feel like they're obligated to do Google Plus.
Mm-hmm.
But do you see that you get results from that? Or is it
We
just-
have, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have built a community. It was very slow at first. We would put up a post and a week would go by and nobody would interact with our content on Google+. And now when I go to Google+, at least every day somebody's doing something there. So it is building up, and it's really hard to get accurate engagement numbers. Of course, Google hasn't really released information themselves about engagement, and outside firms have tried to guess. But some of this engagement happens within private circles, so we don't really have a full idea of what's actually happening there. But I think that for people like us, people in the blogger sphere and in the media had jumped on board as early adopters because it's something you had to do for your job. But I think when people are there now, they see that it is a great network. You can, keep people separate based on their circles and their interest. So we've seen good results with building a community there. And Pinterest. I mentioned earlier that it's fun. It's also addicting, and it's great eye candy. But more than that, it sends great high-quality traffic to sites. We hear a lot about how much volume Pinterest can send and how people are using that for affiliate stuff. But really, if you just want organic, high-quality traffic to your site, then you need to look into Pinterest. This data is based on our own internal web analytics, but we found that people coming from Pinterest to Bankrate viewed 22.8% more pages than people on average coming from other sources. And my own hypothesis is that people are kind of in that looky-loo mode when they're on Pinterest. So when they come to your site, they're still in kind of browsing mode, not bounce mode, which is great for two reasons. One being revenue. Depending on how your site monetizes. If you're running ads on a CPM basis, then you could get a 15% raise if someone comes to your site from Pinterest versus another source, simply because they're consuming more impressions before they leave. And it's also great for SEO, because obviously Google and Bing and search engines are monitoring bounce rates and time spent on site and things like that. So you definitely want to harness any site that sends you quality traffic like that. And I mean, we could go on for days about the infinity amount of social networks there are. But YouTube is great, even if you're camera shy, like I am right now. I don't like the guy filming me right now, sorry. And even if your video is not going to go viral, there's still more value to YouTube than that. And that is because it's the second largest search engine in the world. So you're just giving your brand another opportunity to rank for content. And even if your blog content isn't ranking. And you might also be pushing down competitors in search engine results pages if your video ranks. So people are getting exposed to your brand instead of your competitor's brand. LinkedIn, I think most of us have personal LinkedIn profiles to network with industry peers. And there's also, brand pages for LinkedIn, which are, like most social networks, quick and easy to set up, but take a lot of time to maintain and put some thought into it. So if you do have the time to allocate to it, it definitely makes sense because, again, you can run affordable ads there that are targeted. It's a professional network. So I definitely recommend LinkedIn if you have the time. And one of my favorites, I mentioned earlier, Tumblr. I like Tumblr because this is the only social network where no one's going to judge you based on how many people are following you. And that's because on Tumblr, only you know how many people are following you. It's not really based on a follower count. The platform is set up for reblogging and shares and likes. So it's really easy to get your content spread on Tumblr and just get your brand exposed to a new audience that maybe otherwise wouldn't know who you are. Twitter tips. Again, I'm talking to a room of people who are great on Twitter, so much so that they formed a community that now has annual conferences. But you can reach out to new people if you're trying to expand your brand even further. There are about 30 financial conferences that happen every year. And you can find them by looking at places like jumpstart.org, the National Association of Personal Finance Advisors, and the Institute for Financial Literacy. They list a lot of great conferences. And even if you don't go there physically, all these conferences have hashtags, and if you just join that conversation, you're exposing yourself to new people. And of course, every day on Twitter, there are new trends happening. The top trends just change all the time. And if it's a trend that interests you, go ahead and jump in on it, because it's a broad audience paying attention to that trend. So you can expose yourself to new people who might be interested in what you have to say on that topic. And this year was a busy one with the Olympics and the election, but I chose to give you an example of National Tequila Day. National Tequila Day was trending on that day, and we actually did have oddly, some content about it, so I made sure to tweet that. I think this is the most, understated value of social media, is that we can really make our content immortal. And that's because on your blog, you're sharing your personal stories, and those never get old. We've all told the same stories over and over again. So if you don't have the time to create a new blog post, or maybe you don't have the money to hire a freelancer to write a blog post for you, just upcycle some of your old content and dust off an old blog post and just find a new twist, a new way to push it out there on the social networks. And that can really extend the life of your content, which is a business asset. And this is an example from Bankrate. This story was about 2 years old, and we just tweeted it again this summer. So take advantage of your evergreen information. Anybody like the Pointer Sisters? Well, I have some final pointers for you. Who here downloads their Facebook Insights into an Excel file and saves it? I see a couple hands. This is really something that everybody should be doing. It's really easy to do, because Facebook Insights don't go back indefinitely. So if you're curious about what was happening on your Facebook page 2 years ago as compared to today, Facebook might not be able to serve up that information. So mark your calendar just to go in maybe at the first of every month and get the content or the information from the previous month and download it into an Excel file and save it. And you'll thank yourself later, because even if you don't do anything with it now, a year from now you might be curious about a benchmark on a certain statistic or data point, and you can just reach into that Excel file and get it. And you don't have to look far to find social media analytics. Everybody and their brother has a new product and gizmo to measure your social media. And some of them are very cheap, some of them are very expensive. But if you're not really in the market or interested in that, you can get a lot of great information just from your normal web analytics on what's happening in social media. Just kind of focusing on referring domains from social sites, looking at the amount of unique visitors coming in from social, the amount of page views and visits, and percentage of social visits as compared to all visits in general. So just benchmarking that progress will help you understand how you've grown your own social media program. And let's see, there I am, my shameless plug. And we also have, as of this year, a personal finance blogger letter. And it's really dedicated to this community. It goes out just once a month, and we just highlight the top blog posts and interesting things happening within this community. And it's a curated newsletter, so people send me their submissions like, hey, I wrote this great blog post. Sometimes we stumble upon interesting blog posts from people at this conference. And we just throw it in the newsletter, and it's been really popular. People like to read it. So if you're not already subscribed, just get with me and I'll make sure you get added to the list. And if you have some great content that you want to share with the community, be sure to share that with me as well, and we'll get it in the newsletter. And who here likes free drinks? Well, you're in luck, because Bankrate is having a happy hour, so you should definitely come. It's at 6 o'clock at Katie Mullen's Irish Pub, which is just a few blocks away on 16th Street. So now I guess it's time for some Q&A. Yes?
Could you kind of touch on how, if that's still relevant, means of measuring?
Right. Honestly, I'm more of a fan of Klauschbag than Clout, is I'm not really sure. Facebook has come out with how their algorithm works. Google has conferences on how their algorithm works. I'm not really sure about Clout. So I think what's more important, again, like I said, I make sure to keep an eye on our engagement rates on our social networks, that it's not a ghost town, that we're curating stuff from other people and that people are responsive to us rather than what Clout says. Yes.
I just want to make a comment about giveaways on Facebook.
Mhm.
There's a lot of talk at the conference about giveaways on Facebook,
Mhm.
and there are very specific rules about giveaways.
Right.
And people need to be careful. You could lose your entire page if you do something
Right.
such as making them like your page,
Mhm.
whatever those are against. So I recommend everybody really go and read those.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point to bring up. And I think if you're partnering with a brand, especially a brand that's lawyered up, you'll be somewhat insulated from that, because I know when we partner up with bloggers, we have to go through our lawyers with all the official rules, make sure we're not violating any Facebook terms. And if you're not partnering with a brand, I definitely recommend going through those steps too. But we make sure to have agreements, official rules with the community that's not violating Facebook's terms, and also agreements between us and the blogger, so everybody's on the same page about expectations.
You should also, even if you're working with a reputable brand, they may not be behaving reputably,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not as insulated as necessary.
Okay. Yep. Alrighty. Good point.
Melanie Nelson is going to be talking about this tomorrow.
Oh, great. Awesome. Good. Yes. I'll go down the row one by one.
Do you have any advice or thoughts on, and this is specific to people that may still be anonymous
Okay.
on their blog, about how to balance like your own personal blog or personal Twitter account or Facebook account with your professional blog?
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Mm-hmm. I know. I'm in that boat too, because I manage Bankrate's brand, and then I'm Bankrate Janet, and then I have a personal Twitter account as well. And that's why networks like Google Plus are great, because you can kind of push out different posts just to certain people. But I actually have several handles. I think when you have several handles, you just need to be sure that it's relevant to that audience you're pushing it out to. And if you're anonymous and you're trying to kind of build your authority, I think Twitter's a great place to start. I can tell you when I came to Bankrate, we had about 400 followers on the handle. And just through organic, networking with people, bloggers, other media outlets, we grew our following without spending a dime by 900% in about 11 months. So, and we just did that by translating real-world connections into social media. So if one of our reporters interviewed somebody, I was stalking that person on Twitter and tweeting them. And if one of our people got interviewed, I was again finding that journalist who interviewed them and tweeting them. So all that natural activity that was happening in the real world, just tweeting those people organically.
So as far as like having Twitter on your smartphone,
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming like at this conference you are as Bankrate, like what you're signed in on.
Yeah.
But having to sign back in or back out.
Yeah. Well, my app lets me have several streams, so I can just switch my personas and then go and tweet from different accounts. So I guess it depends on the app that you have.
I have two questions.
Okay.
The first one is about Pinterest. I'm just not really sure with Pinterest how it would work for a finance blog that's not heavy on pictures.
Right.
Is it like a food blog or a fashion blog?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice about that? I mean, I post pictures from time to time, but
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're in the same boat too with that challenge. And obviously, infographics are great if you have those for Pinterest. And sometimes you can get by with stock images if you have an interesting story and headline, and your board is properly marketing. People aren't coming to your board for art and interesting, visual pieces, but they're coming to that board because they know they're going to get valuable information. And I think another thing to do is rather than just worrying about your Pinterest site, just optimizing your personal blog for Pinterest and making sure, I'm assuming you have a WordPress blog. So it's probably easier for you to just making sure you have pin it buttons next to what visuals you do have. So again, people coming to your blog can share that story on Pinterest.
okay. The other question is about Facebook, and this is very, very rudimentary. I know this is unusual for someone who's 130, but I've never been on Facebook
Okay.
myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a high school teacher, so it's not really.
Right.
And so I really don't have any idea how Facebook works,
Mm-hmm.
especially as a blogger or
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. Do you have an example, like a resource that I can go to that's gonna, talk to me like I'm the idiot that I am and explain everything
Right, right.
about how Facebook works?
I would probably, if you want a basic article, I would probably Google, starting out, how do I start a brand page? And then for ongoing information, I really like Mashable and allfacebook.com. Those are great resources for just, sure, allfacebook.com. And I believe Media Bistro owns them now. But they are always giving the latest information of new happenings on Facebook and new features that you can take advantage of. And even if you're late to the game, things change so fast that you can catch up pretty quickly. I mean, really, as of last week, Facebook started offering to our page the ability to not just geo-target, but now we can target our posts by relationship status, by all these crazy things. So if you're late to the game, you can catch up, and probably what was true 5 years ago isn't even true now. So you're welcome. We can make it available online. It is not right now, but we'll put it up on our Bankrate page, and I'll be sure to share it. Oh, good, good. I'll get with Philip and see if there's a way where he could maybe point people to where it is on our site. Mm-hmm.
There'll be more now.
Okay, those are good questions, because in both of those scenarios, I already had relationships with those bloggers, so they really didn't come at me with a formal pitch. Well, the reason I had that Roth IRA movement is because Jeff Rose approached me about the Roth IRA movement and the recent Life Aware movement. And he just came out with me with all this energy that he wanted to start another movement and could Bankrate sponsor it. And he had had another successful movement, so I knew it would be worthwhile because we'd get more exposure into the whole blogger community. So, we just I went with the lawyers and drafted up the legal documents, and we just went with it. But if you don't have that kind of relationship, I would definitely recommend sending over some statistics about, what kind of reach your blog you have, or if you don't have a huge following, how engaging is your blog? And that might be something we'd be interested in, if you have kind of a cult following, a cult niche following.
Jan, I know what you do day in and day out, and for anybody who is trying to juggle as much as you do, but especially when you don't even have anybody else to support you, what recommendations do you have for trying to juggle all the different
Right.
social networks that
Yeah.
anybody has to deal with?
So I think Kylie spoke to this a little bit and made a good point about setting aside time, not only just an amount of time that you want to do it, but a specific time frame each day to devote to whatever your goal is. So for social media, I would dedicate maybe just 30 minutes a day to actively finding people that you want to follow, that are interesting and relevant, tweeting those people, starting conversations with them. Same thing on Google+, just more outreach. And if you just do that 20 to 30 minutes a day consistently, you're going to see your brand grow. So that's kind of how you could deal with the time management factor if obviously you're doing other things besides social media. All very great questions. Oh, one in the back. That would probably be for us, Facebook, simply because Facebook sends us the highest volume of traffic, and Bankrate has a monetization. Once our traffic comes to us, we can monetize it. So I would say Facebook just because it sends us the most, and it's also very high quality, like Pinterest. Pinterest and Google Plus send us the highest quality, as well as Facebook. Okay. Thank you.